this is the phone I've been using as my primary for the last 10 days or so. This is the Motorola Edge 40. Now, I've been really enjoying my time with this phone. Now, that is not to say it is free of any cons whatsoever. It does have some notable ones. And in today's video, let's take a look at all that, the pros, the cons, everything in between. Hey guys, Ash here from C4E Tech and welcome to my full review of the Motorola Edge 40. Let's get started. Guys, regardless of if a phone's back is glass or plastic, phones these days, they have one thing in common. If you want to maintain the looks, you're going to have to use it with a case on. Now, the Moto Edge 40 is the first time in a long time that I've felt comfortable using the phone naked. And that is how I used it for the entire 10 days. Now, as you can see here, this back, it looks pristine with absolutely no signs of use. It's just 10 days, dude. The common user is gonna use this phone for what, 2-3 years? So what the hell does 10 days matter? Now, if that is what you're thinking, well, I agree, I definitely do. In that sense, it doesn't really matter at all. Now, I can't tell you how this back is gonna look in 2-3 years, but what I can tell you is that I've had phones with plastic backs that I've babied around with cases on that I've ended up picking up scratches very easily. Hell, there have been times where by the time I'm done shooting footage for the unboxing, there have been micro scratches to the back. So in comparison, I absolutely love this vegan leather back here. And I'm not just talking about the Edge 40. The overall trend in the industry these days, we've seen this kind of fall leather finishes from a lot of brands. I mean, Xiaomi, Vivo, Nubia, Oppo, and now even Realme. So as far as industry trends go, this is a good one I really like. Now, coming back to the Edge 40, the fact that this phone is only about 170 grams-ish heavy, it's also pretty sleek. The sides are metal. Add to it the fact that you can actually use it without a case. All this together mean this phone offers one of the best in-hand feels. And I don't even mean for the segment. I like how this phone feels in hand more than even some very expensive flagships. So Motorola has absolutely nailed the build. The green, it looks pretty neat too. Now this build is not without its compromises. That is after all the reason why phones are bigger, bulkier, heavier, thicker, right? So here are some cons. The Edge 40, it does not have a headphone jack. It doesn't have support for micro SD. Hell, it can't even take a second physical SIM. I mean, there is support for 2 SIMs in the form of a physical SIM and an eSIM, and as always, Moto has excellent 5G band support, but the fact that it can take only one physical nano SIM might be an inconvenience for some. Also, the battery capacity is just 4400 mAh. Now, all this is due to the fact that this phone is super sleek. Now, talking about the battery life on this, it was acceptable. Guys, I'm not a screen on time guy. I go by what percentage of battery is left by the end of my regular day. If I've got say 20-30% in the tank, I'd say the battery life is good. If a phone gives me a little more, I'd be impressed. This phone, it gave me 10-15% in the tank by the end of a regular day. So yeah, it did get me through a day of regular use on a single charge. But if I ended up doing something heavy, like for example, use a lot of maps, use the GPS for navigation, or game quite a bit, or use the camera a lot, then I definitely had to plug in before the end of the day. So that is one area of concern for me, especially if you're someone who plans to keep the phone for a substantial period of time. Because today it's 10-15% left in the tank at the end of the day. And you know, batteries do degrade over time. That's a natural process. So how is it gonna be at the end of say 18 months? So that is something you're gonna have to take into account if you are considering buying this phone. But for now though, I'm gonna call the battery life slightly above average. Also keep in mind, I did do my entire testing with the refresh rate at 144 Hz. If you set it on auto or switch it down, you could get better battery life. Now, on the days I needed a quick top up, Moto's made that very easy by including a 68-watt charger in the box. This lets you go from 0 to 50 in just 10 minutes. So that's sweet. You can get a full charge in 40. On top of that, you also get support for wireless charging at up to 15 watts, which isn't something you commonly find on phones in this price segment. Also uncommon for this segment is the IP68 rating that the Edge 40 has. Okay, guys, enough with what's on the outside. Let's now talk about what's on the inside. The Edge 40, it's powered by MediaTek's Dimensity 8020 SoC, which is nothing but a repackaged Dimensity 1100. Now, I hate how MediaTek's gone about renaming their chips, but that's a story for another day. Here on the Edge 40, this chip, it performs really well. Whether you're comparing it to the Snapdragon 778G of the Nothing Phone 1, or the Exynos 1380 on the Galaxy A54 or F54, or the Dimensity 7050 on the Realme 11 Pro Plus, of course, it is no Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 2 or Dimensity 8200, so the performance I'd say is slightly above the middle of the pack. So if you guys do want to see a comparison between this phone and say the Poco F5, let me know in the comments below if that's something you'd find interesting. Maybe I'd try to get that video done. Anyway, moving on, the fact that Motorola only sells one SKU, and that's 8256 LPDDR4X with UFS 3.1. Now that is also a pro. In my time with this phone, it was perfectly fine for day-to-day tasks. The Edge 40 could continuously push that 144Hz. And this display right here, now this is also another positive. This is a 6.55-inch OLED panel with a Full HD Plus resolution and a 144Hz refresh rate. So this panel, just like the back, it also curves at the edges and helps keep the phone narrow and easy to wield. It's got a brightness peak of 1200 nits, so using it outdoors was not an issue. There is support for HDR10+, no Dolby Vision though. There is, however, support for Dolby Atmos, and with those excellent stereo speakers, the media consumption experience on this phone was top-notch. That said, let's now talk about another con. Motorola has not used any name brand protection for the display, so there is no Gorilla Glass here, but they do seem to have used some kind of toughened glass with an oleophobic coating, so it didn't pick up a lot of fingerprints or anything. Sorry, I digress. We were talking about the user experience, right? Now, Motorola's software, it's pretty stockish with a splattering of their own functionality neatly tucked away mostly into the Moto app. Now, if you want to know what extra features the Edge 40 brings to the table, I have a dedicated video on just that. I'll leave a link to that video below the subscribe button down below. Do check that out if you haven't watched it yet. Now, long story short, the interface is fast. There are nice to haves like ready for and intuitive features like Chop Chop included. Now, for the most part, like 90-95% of the time that I use this phone, it runs smooth. Occasionally, when there was a lot happening, it did drop a frame or two, but my experience was largely positive. Of course, this is not a gaming phone, but it fared surprisingly well under load. Now, the Edge 40 can get a little warm if you're continuously pushing the chip inside, because it is a sleek phone after all, one with a metal frame, and all that heat's gotta go somewhere, right? But this isn't something that happens with regular use. Only when I played games for over 30 minutes or I was running stress tests did I actually notice it getting warm. Now that's because, like I said, this phone has a very slim metal frame and Moto's chosen not to throttle performance here. Honestly, I was extremely surprised to see a 98.5% stability on both 3D Mark Wildlife and Wildlife Extreme. So basically, if you played a game on this phone, like a demanding game on this phone for 20 minutes straight, by the end of your 20 minutes, the phone's going to be performing just as well as it did at the start of the 20-minute session, which is something much more expensive phones have failed to do. Anyways, enough with the pros, let's now switch back to cons. The update schedule. Now, Motorola has promised 2 years of Android version updates and 3 years of security patches, which, well, it's nothing to write home about. It's not a huge negative either. The problem here, the con that I'm talking about, is how efficient they've been with those updates. Their track record, now that's the con. They've not had a solid track record. Now, for what it's worth, after I pointed this out in a previous video, Motorola did reach out to me and they were surprisingly frank. They admitted software updates have been a pain point for them and they're currently working on ensuring such situations do not arise again. They're hoping to be very punctual and stable with future updates. Now, yeah, it is a brand making a promise, so you're gonna have to take it with a huge grain of salt. But at the same time, you gotta give them at least, a tiny little bit of respect for admitting to their flaws, owning up to it, and trying to work towards not repeating it. Anyways, now moving on, let's talk about cameras. And I absolutely adore how Motorola has got just 2 cameras here. There is no useless macro or depth sensor just to make up numbers. You get a primary, you get a secondary ultra-wide, and that's it. I really wish more brands could go on and do this. Now the primary, it's a 50 megapixel 1x1.55 inch sensor that's paired with an optically stabilized f1.4 lens. Now that is a fast aperture usually reserved only for flagships. And when you shoot pictures like this, you can see that shallow depth of field at play. This was not portrait mode, it's just the natural bokeh thanks to that wide f1.4 aperture lens. Under good light, the camera performs admirably. The detail levels were good, colors were pretty accurate, and I have no issues calling these results satisfactory. For portraits, Motorola offers 3 different focal lengths to choose from using the 2 sensors, and here Motorola prioritizes the subject being exposed well, which at times leads to highlights being clipped in the background. Now, under low light, the Edge 40 continues to perform admirably. The optically stabilized f1.4 lens again helps. It allows for more light to be let in, which results in the images appearing quite clean with the noise levels kept to a minimum. With video, the chip limits it to 4K 30, and here the OIS once again helps keeping the footage stable. Now, if you are shooting in more challenging conditions, Motorola offers something called Horizon Lock. This manages to keep the footage extremely stable at the cost of detail. So now let me actually play the clip we just shot. Other motor features like dual capture and spot color are also present and accounted for. So overall, I feel this phone, the Edge 40, is a well put together device. At its asking price of 30,000 rupees, unless gaming is a huge part of what you're going to use your phone for, and of course, as long as you can put up with the average battery life, the Edge 40 seems to be an excellent option. The vegan leather back, the metal frame, the sleekness, the bright 144Hz display, the IP68 rating, the inbox, fast charger, wireless charging support, the cameras, Motorola has done well here. And that is my take on the Edge 40. What do you think? If you were looking for a phone in the 30K price segment, would you choose this? Or is there anything else in particular you would choose? Would you like to see a comparison between the Edge 40 and some other phone? Let me know in the comments below. And with that, we are at the end of this review video. Thumbs up, thumbs down based on whatever you felt about it. Subscribe, turn on notifications, hit that bell icon if you haven't yet. Thanks for your time, thanks for watching. Until next time, my name's Ash. You've been watching C4E Tech, and I'm signing off for now. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.